He gently bit my tongue. The liquid was too sour. Its bitter taste startled me when I looked over and heard the gurgling sound of milk coming from the shaggy bartender wearing a t-shirt of the band, The National. I couldn't tell if he was new or not, but his messy brown hair and face told me it was indifference. It's a shame because usually my espresso is delicious when I pass by. It was a pastime of an old friend named Jensen. Overall, he's a nice guy. He had spent the last half hour talking about his work, and I was starting to lose interest. It wasn't enough of a distraction to get out of my head and the discomfort I was feeling. I hate being in public these days. That's enough about me. What have you done? Jensen asked as he leaned back in his chair and took a sip of coffee that contained too much cream and sugar. I'm surprised how he stays in shape when he drinks so much milk and sweeteners. He looks like he has for years. He was thin but toned, with sandy blonde hair and dreamy blue eyes. I was doing well and went back to school. I needed a new career. Yes, I understand the need for this. How are things outside of work? I ask. As usual, I still hang out with my old group on weekends. They ask about you. Maybe you should hang out sometime. What can I do with you? I asked harshly. I was wondering if you could go out. So how about we go lift weights and then go to the bar like before? I mean, we could do yoga or something. Yeah, my speed hasn't been the same lately, Jen, I replied. It's not like the good old days. I traded my tequila for coffee and my weight for binge-watching shows on Netflix. It was a lifestyle that Jensen could never understand. I'm sorry, man. I've never been the coffee shop type. This seems like a place for hooking up and potentially losing connections to me. Lost connection. His eyes lit up. Have you ever heard of missed connections? Craigslist connections are the best. No, I don't know, I replied, watching as Jensen took his phone back. He seemed almost excited as he typed on his phone. The noise around me started to make me feel uneasy. I imagine everyone is looking at us and wondering what I'm doing with this idiot. But sometimes I'm just like him. He laughed so loudly for a second, I felt like I stood out like a sore thumb. I saw you at the best price, Jensen said loudly with a smile on his face. You were wearing a black baseball cap and gray jeans. I've been dreaming of taking it off since I met you that day. What are you talking about? He smiled. It's the missed connection on Craigslist. This is where people think they have a connection to someone in a public place and post it in hopes that person will see it and contact them. That looks pretty sad, Jen. If you mean sad as well as funny. If you say so, buddy, I said and took a sip of coffee. I looked around for a moment while Jensen continued reading and smiling like a little schoolboy. He put the phone down when it started to bother me. So are you dating anyone? The question annoyed me, but I knew he would repeat it. It had been a while since we'd seen each other, and it was a good question to ask, but my insecurities were starting to surface. Not now, I muttered. You've got to go back, man. Yes, I heard that from everyone. Jensen leaned forward. That's because they're right. We don't want to see you wasting your time being unhappy. My life is a little different now, I answered, looking at him with irritation. It was easy for him to say that. His life has not changed at all. He can do the same things without much effort and without thinking. He knew he had nerve damage. I'm sorry, man. I don't mean anything by that. It's okay. I'm still working things out mentally and physically. Yeah, I'll do that. But I have to go. I'll be late for work, he said as he started to stand up. I tried to follow him but had difficulty and stumbled a bit. I looked into his eyes and saw a look of pity. It took me a while to regain my balance. We started walking out of the store when Jensen started shaking his head. It took a while for him to return. I'm sorry, he said regretfully. It's okay. Just can't move like before. I caught him while we were looking at his motorbike. He still rides the 1000R, and it's still in great shape. It was his pride and joy, but looking at him made my body ache. Jensen smiled slightly and started hugging me. "It's nice to meet you. We need to keep in touch, bro, because I miss you. I promise I'll do better. Well, let's start again next week, and you should read some of these missed connections. You will have fun with them." We left and I went shopping. I could feel his little eyes staring at me as I walked down the aisle to get my cereal and coffee. It was an innocent look. He pulled on Mom's pant leg while I tried to bend over to grab my favorite concoction. He must have been over 5 years old, with dark brown hair and small brown eyes that looked at me as I picked up the bag of coffee. Turned to him and gave him a small smile, but I knew it was coming when his mother turned to me. "Mom, what's wrong with that man?" he asks. She looked a lot like her child, but at that moment her eyes were wide open and her cheeks were red. She looked at her son with shame and turned her back on me. "I'm so sorry," she said. "It's okay, ma'am. I know he didn't mean anything by that," I reassured her. I grabbed a box of cereal and headed back down the aisle. I tried to pay attention to every step as I walked to the checkout counter. Maybe it was me, but I could feel everyone's eyes staring at me as I stood in line. I needed something to take my mind off of everything, so I followed Jensen's advice. I look at missed connections, but one of them caught my attention. This makes me think that Jensen decided to tease me. I read the title and then clicked. "The handsome man I saw at the 8th Street Cafe. You're sitting there with a stupid-looking blonde man. Sometimes you look miserable, and I'm sad to see you like that. I will keep in touch." I picked up the phone and called Jensen to answer my letter. "You're such an asshole, but I'll compliment you because I'm handsome," I joked before hanging up. That was the last time I thought about it. I was sitting on the couch wondering what to watch on Netflix when my phone started ringing. It took me a while to get up from my chair and walk to the table where I was charging my phone. I looked to see Jensen answering my call. I picked up the phone and answered. "Hello, funny guy. Even though I agree that you are a very handsome man, I still have to ask you what I did. Text about us at the coffee shop." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I'm sure it's just a coincidence that you said look over there, and now someone is describing me." "Seriously, I'm not. What do you mean when an article describes you? You posted a missed connection on Craigslist, Jensen." "No, I haven't, but I wish I could because it would be amazing to see the look on your face," he replied as I walked towards my couch. I relaxed while waiting for my answer. He probably had a huge smile on his face. "Good question, but I'm hanging up until you find a better way to lie." It wasn't me. I'm too busy to do anything like that today, and I'm not even that smart. "We all have our moments, Jen," I replied, hanging up and returning to missed connections. Jensen will probably delete it now that I discovered it, but something else stands out. That's another one from an hour ago. It was at the store that I met the child who was looking at me. This is for the handsome guy who bought my favorite coffee at Wolverine Market. "I see you again today. I know you hate when strangers stare at you, but you have no reason to be embarrassed because you are perfect just the way you are. Don't ever feel bad about yourself." I feel so strange. It must be a joke, but I don't see Jensen following me either, because that would require too much commitment. This is starting to make me a little nervous the more I think about it. It was a little scary. The only thing distracting me was the pain in my right thigh. Today I walked more than usual. I decided it was time for a change and tried to stop thinking about strange things. They can't talk about someone like me. Went into my room to get sweatpants and a t-shirt. I undressed and looked at my body. I was once a strong man, but now those muscles have been replaced by ugly scars that run across my torso and lower body. This is the biggest thing that bothers me the most. It was the metal rod and prosthetic foot that created my right leg. They saved my life that night, and several surgeries have kept me active. The only thing they couldn't save was my leg. It took months to get this, and I'm still using it. I'd run around like a robot in a bad sci-fi movie, and that's why I'm not safe. I scolded the drunk driver who ran a red light and hit the right side of my motorbike. It was a night that changed everything. That night, he stole more from me than just a fully functional body. My phone rang again, and I answered it. "Dude, you need to call the police." Jensen was the one who seemed the most nervous. "What's going on?" I asked, a bit surprised. I stood in my room wearing only shorts and clutching my phone. "I'm reading to the man, apartment 124 in Building D. My heart is pounding as I look out my bedroom window. That's the building and my apartment number. It could be a sick joke. Jensen was playing. Or someone followed him. I went home. What did it say? It said that while I watched you undress with disgust, I still found you perfect just like you are. How is this possible? Call the police now. I'm coming." He shouted loudly. "It's true," said a voice behind me, making me stiffen with fear. I slowly turned my head, trying to stay calm as I dialed 911. It was what was behind that deeply shocked me. I could even feel the phantom pain of my missing leg right before my eyes. A woman with light brown hair stood behind me in the doorway. She has hazel eyes and a sweet face. She looked the same as she did that night, wearing a gray shirt and dark denim jeans. She smiled at me as I tried to regain my composure. It is impossible for him to be here. That night I lost her with my leg. While I was lucky to survive the accident, she did not. I left with a crushed leg, and my girlfriend Holly was trapped under the driver's tire. It crushed her that night. I still remember the sound of his bones being crushed under the weight of the car. "What are you doing here?" Ask. I don't like to talk about it because I feel guilty about that night. Although I may have lost a leg, the biggest thing I lost that night was her. The thought of his eyes and smile was too much to bear. Just want you to know, even without legs, that you are still perfect to me and that you should never feel insecure. I lived in a 4-bedroom apartment downtown, and after graduating from college, a few Omega Pi Epsilon brothers, and I went halfway to a cheap place. This is me, David, even though everyone calls me Trip because I have a third nipple. Okay, not really, but I have a mole near my left nipple that everyone calls my mole. There's Chad, who we call Captain Ahab, because this guy is obsessed with fat girls, Aka whales. Preston, or Little League, got its name because my man slept with a baseball bat in the bed sheets, saying it was for house security. But all he did with it was got drunk and dropped a beer can off the roof. Last is Duke, who is known only as Squirts. Unfortunately for you, the history of this name is classed as Omega Pi Epsilon knowledge. We had just graduated, and neither of us really had the savings or jobs to pay that much. Little League Dad funded it for a while, but he refused to contribute a little more to the bills we shared, so the budget was tighter than a religious girl's ashole. With that said, we've been trying to turn our small apartment into a cute-ish bachelorette. Captain Ahab's brother worked at a bar that was closed, so he gave us some neon beer signs to choose from. I have a ping pong table I bought at Spencer's a few years ago. It no longer lights up but still has a cool neon design. We have a few beanbag chairs that we got from the school playroom when they changed the furniture. The only thing we lacked was a sofa. That's why I turned to Craigslist. I know, finding a couch on Craigslist is a bit difficult, but we're on a budget. I found a few sofas for sale, but they were all ugly granny sofas. When I went to the free page, I found something perfect. Free blue suede sofa. Only about half an hour away. I called the number listed and confirmed it was still available. The man I spoke to was extremely nice. He even offered to bring it to our house since he was planning on bringing it anyway if falls. About an hour later, this big pickup truck arrived. I could see the blue of the couch peeking out from under the tarp. The man I spoke to on the phone introduced himself as Bill and helped me unload it into our living room. Good guy. I gave it a beautiful light for the path. We've had the couch in our living room for a few weeks now. It's quite comfortable, and the blue color matches the blue of the biggest beer brand, which is quite impressive. I'm sure that the next time I bring a chick home, she will absolutely love the atmosphere here. The only problem is now there's this funny smell in our living room. After researching, I realized a bad smell was coming from the sofa. At first I thought maybe it was just the smell of the previous owner's house, but it seemed to get stronger and stronger. It was cold outside, so we turned up the heat. I brushed it off like the different smells of the 4 bachelors sitting up there with their sweaty balls. I'm pretty sure Captain Ahab also deleted the big girl hanging around, so that probably doesn't help. I got as feverish as I could, hoping it would cover up the stench. And it did for a few hours, but then the smell came back, stronger than before. We had a party a few nights ago. Tons of people. There weren't as many girls as I initially expected, but there were a few attractive girls and a few 6s, which quickly turned into 8s after a few drinks. Picked someone who seemed somewhat interested and teamed up with her to play table tennis. Bad call. She couldn't breathe, kept choking, so the other team kept scoring against us, and I was drunk after a few rounds, although the Jigger bombs in the kitchen afterwards probably didn't help much. I wonder if I can score points with Amanda. Ashley, does it start with the letter A or E, Aaron? Anyway, I'm inclined to think not, because I woke up with my face in a beanbag. When I opened my eyes, drunk, turned around to see Captain Ahab slumped on the bench, his feet resting on his back. Looks like even if I was unlucky, Captain. There was a big dent in the couch, probably from the beautiful whale blubber hitting the cushion. I decided to take a shower. Staggered into the bathroom and took off my t-shirt, shorts, and boxers that read Omega Pi Epsilon Gets It On, Flip Cup Champions 2015, before jumping in and turning on the water. I was the first person, so the water was still warm. It was great, really great, so great that I spent more time than necessary thinking about Aaron, Emma, whatever, who I might have hooked up with. When I go out, I dry my hair with a towel, dry my arms and legs, and wrap it around my waist. I brush my teeth and rinse my mouth, spit water, or look in the mirror if I feel nauseous. I did it. I drank last night's leftover drink. I thought it was mine. It was in my pimp cup. I took a big gulp. Don't judge, a little dog hair never hurts. I then went to the living room, where the captain was sitting lazily. Hey, big guy, I whispered. It seems like someone caught a whale last night. Shut up, Trip. He held his head and groaned. Oh my God, what the hell is that? I asked and pointed at his arm, which was covered in red spots. What? He whispered, holding her hand or looking. I noticed it on his face too. Dude, I don't know. He grumbled before standing up. Free shower. Yeah, go wash that stinky thing. Laughed before drinking the rest of my drink. I thought there must be detergent or something on the chair that was causing the rash, so I went to see what I could do. It seemed like someone had spilled a drink or two on the mattress, or Captain Ahab had been angry. When I lifted the cushions to see if the covers could be removed for washing, I realized they were incredibly heavy and soaked. I wonder what happened the night before. Maybe we were a little crazier than I thought. When I threw the cushions on the floor, the smell was overwhelming, worse than ever. Looked down at the cushions at the back of the couch and felt nauseous. Dozens of maggots were crawling under the cushions near the gap in the sofa, writhing and writhing on the fabric. Disgusted and full of beer, Red Bull and Jagger, I went to the bathroom and vomited. Cornucopia. Worst thing I've ever seen. I yelled at the captain through the shower curtain, spilled a bottle of Gatorade. Gotta keep those electrolytes, son. and pulled my t-shirt over my nose. I put the cushion back on the seat and opened the front door. The captain dressed and met me in the living room. Together, we carried the stench out of our apartment to the trash. Halfway there, we heard a thud and the bench became much lighter. Looking at the ground, we smelled something. On the sidewalk of the parking lot, spread out near my feet, was a damned body. We threw the couch away and kept it in the house. I called the police and they couldn't identify the body or why he died. But they didn't say it was murder, more like natural causes. The Craigslist post was deleted and I forwarded the description of the guy who brought the couch and his phone number to the police, even though they said he appeared to be disconnected. After the police left, the captain vomited and said he had to lie down. I'm a little worried about this guy because he's barely left his room these past few days, and the rash seems to be getting worse, even blistering. He also hasn't had health care since his father lost his job last month, and Little League refused to help pay for his hospital stay. Does anyone know what he might have? As I sat there, I was sure I heard voices coming from the door next to the chair I was sitting on. When the guy came back, I asked him about it, and he said it was just his radio playing in the basement. I paid him $15, but he said he needed more. I told him I was out of money, and he said it would only be $15. He was very angry and banged the table very hard. I quickly grabbed the coin and ran out to the car. I got in the car and locked the door. I tried to start it, but remembered the battery was dead. The guy ran out of the house with a gun and shot at my window. He reached for the lock, but I pushed his hand away. That's when I lost consciousness. I woke up in a room full of chains and other weapons. Inside were 2 other people, naked and covered in blood. I panicked and tried to stand up, but was tied up. Luckily, there was a piece of glass next to me, and one of my hands was loosely tied, so I grabbed it and freed my tied hand. Cut the rope around my feet and stood up. I grabbed the gun from the table and went upstairs. The guy was sleeping, so I didn't have to use the gun. I snuck around the house looking for a phone. Finally found one and called 911. When the police arrived, they arrested the principal and said he was a wanted criminal. They unlocked the chained people and took them to the hospital. The police drove me home and I fell asleep. Now, 3 years later, I'm writing this story because the guy is getting out of jail because he pretended it was his friend's house and he didn't know, and somehow the judge believed him. The guy was released from prison on March 1, 2018. I received an email from a stranger telling me to be careful. If you enjoyed today's stories, leave a comment below. It'll help me a ton. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.